GearNetwork.com.
This is a Gear Network production.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this podcast. If you're looking to support this podcast and this network, visit shopgear.com. That's shopgere.com. It will take you right to amazon.com, to your Amazon account, and you can do all of your Amazon shopping. The difference is using our link versus going to Amazon's link is that you are telling Amazon that Gear Network referred you, and they end up giving us a small percentage of your purchase, which helps out this program and this network entirely. And of course, if Amazon's not your thing, it's understandable. On GearNetwork.com, G-E-R-E network.com, if you click on the top bar that says donate to Gear, there's several different PayPal buttons. You can donate to us as well if Amazon isn't your thing. Your support is vital to helping the Gear Network maintain this programming, this quality programming, and continuing our growth through the year. As always, thank you very much for your support and your listens and your downloads and your likes and your shares from all of us here at the Gear Radio Network.
Welcome to episode number 2 of the Good Guys with Guns podcast. I am your host, Jordan, and Tom is not with me again on this episode. He is busy. He was doing some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, getting NRA certified, doing all sorts of cool things to further advance his instructorness. I don't know if instructorness is a word, but anyway, he should be back for the next episode. We've worked it out so that he'll be on every other episode, and those will be some of our bigger topics that we can actually have a discussion about. So, very excited about that. Speaking of next episode, I have lined up Nikki from the Liberty Doll YouTube channel. She is going to get on with me and discuss what the Second Amendment is for her coming from Massachusetts. With her background, she does have a P238 for carry, and so we'll talk a little bit about how she made that choice, and talk a little bit about kind of what shaped her vision of the Second Amendment and whatnot, being from Massachusetts. So that's very exciting. As always, we can be found on Twitter at GGWGMA. We can also be found on Facebook at www.facebook.com/GGWG podcast. And you can also email the show at ggwgpodcast@gmail.com. So please, if you have any requests for topics or suggestions, criticism, constructive, mean, preferably, positive, send it there, post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook, send us a message on Facebook. We also ask that you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. So, I essentially should have titled this episode News You May or May Not Use, because that's what this episode is. It'll be a short episode. I'm going to try and keep you guys to half an hour or less, which should be fairly easy. I'll start out real quick. Since we really last spoke on a full planned out episode, and I wasn't talking about the assault weapons ban lawsuit, I figured I'd give you some updates about myself. I finally got rid of my 40. I fell out of love with the round, like I had said, and was making the switch to 9. So in the time since October, I've picked up a 320C, which I absolutely love. It is the best out-of-box trigger I've ever pulled. Great gun, great grip angle, naturally points. Very pleased with that purchase. And then most recently, I went to Outer Limits in Holbrook and picked up a VP9. It was a fantastic deal. I honestly wasn't even sure I was going to make a purchase that day. And I had pulled out a couple guns. I was looking at the 226. I was looking at the 229. I do love my SIGs. And they had remembered that I wanted the H&K for a while. I had talked about getting the gray version, and they just happened to get one in on consignment, and I couldn't pass the deal up. So shout out to them for hooking it up with the VP9, which shoots like a dream. Again, perfect grip angle, points very naturally. The one thing I will say is phenomenal trigger, close to what you get with the 320, although I hate, and this is a personal thing about me, I hate the trigger safety, that little lever on the trigger. I hate that personally, but I get why they do it. So that's something I'm going to have to look into changing out, I think. But regardless, fantastic gun, shoots like a dream. I'm very happy with my collection of 9mm that I'm working on. So enough about me. Enough of we're all caught up. I do want to apologize to the listeners for not getting an episode out in February, but my appendix gave up on me, so I had it removed, and unfortunately, I couldn't get into the studio and get some editing done when I wanted to, and here I am now. So let's jump right in, I guess. The one big thing I wanted to lead off with is the newly expanded constitutional carry zone for northern New England. That is right. You can now carry in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine without needing an out-of-state resident permit. And I had seen there was a lot of questions in some of the forums about the original New Hampshire bill required some type of reciprocity with New Hampshire in order to carry. I have been told the version of the bill that was signed into place did not require reciprocity for New Hampshire to carry there. With that being said, yes, you can carry in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. Definitely, if you're going to go up there for any length of time, overnight stays, call the local or state police, give them that courtesy call, find out your local laws. Make sure that you are 100% aware of any local ordinances or places that you cannot carry up there. And it's always kind of nice to give that courtesy call. I've been told by several law enforcement officers that when traveling into a different state, it's always nice to have that. And also make sure that you know that you've got a duty to declare or not. I've gone to concealednation.org, which does a great job of breaking it down by state. They do reference laws that would tell you if you need to declare. So, concealednation.org, I've looked. The map is a little confusing because for New Hampshire it says, if asked, you must declare. But then if you scroll down to New Hampshire itself, where it's listed, and you click on New Hampshire, it says no known duty to inform. So that one's a little murky. If you're making that courtesy call, just say, hey, listen, in the event that I'm pulled over, do I need to declare for permitless carry? In Maine, you absolutely have to declare if you're permitlessly carrying. And in Vermont, there is no known duty to inform. When you're traveling up there, be safe, enjoy it. No longer have to worry about, if you're passing through New Hampshire to go to Vermont, you no longer have to worry about, just transporting. You can actually just keep your carry firearm on you. So very exciting stuff there. So moving on, these are a couple of bills that you need to be aware of. There's actually 3 of them. 2 that Goal has worked very hard on, has put a lot of effort into helping us expand the way we use the Second Amendment in Massachusetts. They're fairly straightforward, and so I will go through them. I do recommend that you all take a look at Goal's webpage. It's goal.org. And then under the legislation tab, it gives you Goal's 2017-2018 legislation, everything they stand behind and support. And I was kind of shocked as I started to count these, but they've got 29 pieces of legislation currently active that they're working on. And that's phenomenal to me. Definitely go and check out and read the individual summaries. There are links there to get to the actual wording in the bills, things to be aware of, things that they're working on. Very briefly, there are 4 separate suppressor legislations currently in front of the House and Senate for Massachusetts. I'm not going to go through all 4 of those. Just be aware that it looks like there's 4 separate bills. There's also 2 separate bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, as an act relative to the change of address for firearm licensing. These are important because it will remove the harsh penalties if you fail to update your address within the first 30 days of moving. That's kind of cool that they've got legislation in for that, because it's a kind of a stupid rule, and the penalties definitely don't fit. You forgot or what have you. Hopefully that goes through. Definitely go through, mark the ones that you really think need to be supported, and contact your legislator who represents you. So before I get too deep into this, speaking of contacting your legislator, and I'm guilty of this too, but I always recommend that you send your letter or call your legislator, regardless of what previous stances they've taken against where you are ideologically. And let me kind of preface this. If they don't know where you stand on something, they only support the people who speak out to them. I saw a wonderful letter and response from a senator. Wanted to meet with Second Amendment supporting constituents because he hadn't met with them before, and it's not somebody that he had focused his time on. And so this particular person, and I honestly don't even remember where I saw it. It might have been Northeast Shooters. He had emailed his local legislator, and it said, hi, I'm so-and-so, want to express some of my support or express my opposition to certain bills. There are several of myself and my friends who feel the same way, who want you to know that we'd like you to represent us as well as the other people in your area. And the response actually was, what got me is he actually had said, I want to meet with you and your in a small group of like-minded thinkers who I can have active and ongoing discussions with to help me understand your point of view on the Second Amendment and what we could do to make you feel that you are being represented. And I thought that was a very interesting and very cool response. I may have given this a little too much time, but start building relationships with your local representative and senator, because if you can get them to start listening to your point of view, then it could go a long way to help the Second Amendment in Massachusetts. The one thing I will say is also know your facts. Don't speak in generalities. Be confident with the material that you know. Don't go in there unarmed, so to speak. I guess it's a terrible way to do that. If you go to the State House, don't go armed. But go in there with the knowledge that on the topics that you are most important to you. If you're going to go in for hearing legislation, for the suppressors, make sure that there's only 8 states that don't recognize suppressors now, Massachusetts being one of them. Make sure that you know that there's NFA legislation that would remove suppressors from the NFA, and talk about what America is doing and what 48 other states have done and setting precedent on suppressors. And so if those are things to you, make sure that you're educated on the topics that you're prepared to discuss with the senators, because that could go a long way when they know that you're confident about the material and they know that you know what you're talking about. So, bills you should be aware of. S-1322, which is an act relative to the lawful sale of handguns. This was labeled originally as Bill 1157, and essentially a little bit of the history. This is filed by Senator Humison and Representative Samola. This goes to the 2 separate regulations on handguns in Massachusetts. There's the approved roster. A manufacturer submits to independent testing. The firearms tested, put on the approved roster. We all get excited about it. You go to your local dealer and say, oh, I saw that this was approved. Can I purchase it? And then they tell you, sorry, the Attorney General won't let me sell that because it's not safe enough. What this bill does is it removes regulatory authority from the Attorney General. So the Attorney General can no longer act without consent of legislature. And it also repeals any previous regulations that were enacted by the AG's office. Essentially, what it sounds like to me is that the only thing we would have to go by as far as purchasing is the mass approved roster. Definitely show your support for this bill. Talk to your legislators about it. Urge them to support it as well. The next bill from Goal that I think you should all be aware of and support is S1316, formerly 1889. The next bill you should support is S1316, which was formerly billed as 1889. It's a very easy bill to read and understand, and because of that, I'll read it quickly. An act relative to the sale of firearms, S1316, filed by Senator Goby. Section 121 of Chapter 140 of the General Laws, which is the assault weapons ban, as appearing in the 2014 official edition, is hereby amended by striking it out in lines 12 and 13 the words, or copies or duplicates of the weapons. Simply put, it's legislating away the copycat enforcement, which is phenomenal, absolutely needs to be supported, absolutely needs to get your legislators involved and tell them urge them to support Senator Goby's efforts there. It would basically cut the legs out from the enforcement notice without having to go through the courts. So we all understand the implications of that. I don't have to spend a lot of time on it. The final thing I wanted to talk about is actually a bill that you need to urge your legislators to oppose, and that is Senator Cream's bill, now labeled 1298. It was formerly 1884. And so Senator Cream from Newton, it's the same place that's trying to ban leaf blowers because they're too loud and blow dirt into the air. It's the same place that is banning plastic bags. Also now wants to restrict Second Amendment rights. And essentially she's looking to ban an entire caliber cartridge and firearm. She's also trying to enact an additional tax on firearms. And then on top of that, she wants to enact smart gun legislation or smart gun regulations in Massachusetts. To be blunt, this bill sucks. I mean, there's a better way to say it, but to all of you listening, this bill sucks. And so I will read, there's this great article that actually has quotes from Senator Cream in it. And it's very telling on how she thinks about us as a group of individuals supporting our own rights. So, gun violence issues have always been important to me, Senator Cream says, and I've filed gun legislation every session. I want to make it harder and harder to get guns in and guns into the hands of people who shouldn't have them. This bill does nothing to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. That she says that she wants to get guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. I'm assuming she doesn't think anybody should have guns. I urge you all to go and look at crime statistics in Massachusetts. I haven't found one single instance of a convenience store robbery or a gas station holdup or a drug bust by the police where a .50 caliber firearm, a 50 BMG round was used, threatened to be used, confiscated, what have you. And so all this bill is trying to do is remove a large caliber round from being able to be purchased. It's kind of a hollow bill. It makes her feel warm and fuzzy, but it's not anything that actually has any real meaning behind it. Additionally, what she wants to do is add a 4.75% tax on guns and ammunition sales. And so we already pay an 11% tax, excise tax, on guns and ammunition in America. And that's a federal excise tax. And in Massachusetts, we pay 6.25%. So when we buy that $1,000 firearm, we end up paying $1,062.50 on that purchase. And what she wants us to do is she wants to bump that up so that we're now paying $1,100 for that gun, with that 4.75% going to violence prevention programs. And so she wants to build a whole new program on the backs of law-abiding Second Amendment supporters, which is just preposterous and ridiculous because it doesn't, again, affect anything in gun violence, in regards to gun violence. And so that's a problem for me. She also wants to restrict private sales. She wants to make sure that even if you wanted to do a private transfer, it would have to be done at a dealer and go through the NICS check system. There's no problem with the way that private sales are done now. She just thinks they're scary and doesn't like them. And then she wants to make it so that only authorized users of firearms can use them. And so she wants to put smart tech onto guns in Massachusetts. And now I'm going to make this pretty simple. If any of you have a Galaxy S7 device or an S6 device, or you have an iPhone 6S or 7, and you've tried to use that fingerprint scanner on a hot day when your hands are sweaty, or in the winter when you've got gloves on and you're trying to unlock your phone, most just regular times, it doesn't work 100%. In fact, if I had to guess, it probably only works like 63% of the time. And so what she wants to do is give you a 63% chance, essentially, of protecting yourself in the event that you need to remove your carry firearm. And I think that's kind of ridiculous. And so, picture, if you will, someone walking up to you and with a gun or a knife and saying, "Give me all your money," and you going, "Oh, hold on, let me take my glove off and dry my hand, and then pull my concealed firearm to protect myself. Oh, but let me scan my fingerprint first." It doesn't make sense. Smart gun tech doesn't work. It's been proven that it doesn't work. And I think this bill goes a long way to restrict people who've done nothing wrong, who've passed myriads of background checks to get their licenses and have gone through safety courses for licensing. And if you live in the town of Hanover, you now have to actually go through and get a new safety course to renew your license in the town of Hanover. The information probably hasn't changed since, you've taken it 5 years ago, if you're a new licensee still, and you now have to go and spend, $100, $150 on a new licensing course for Hanover, Massachusetts. And so this is just additional burdens placed on the backs of people who don't deserve them. But, I told you I would get you out of here in about a half an hour or less. And so I did that on behalf of Good Guys with Guns. We thank you for joining us. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or Podcast Addict, wherever you do your podcasting. Again, thank you for joining us. Stay safe. Shoot straight.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.